Welcome to video 4 of the Pro Tools Bootcamp series. You guys are moving straight through this thing, and I'm proud of you. We're going to look specifically at editing in this video. Now, editing, audio, MIDI, whatever it is really an area where Pro Tools shines. And if you want to manipulate audio, this is the program you want to do it in. This is what Pro Tools was made famous for, and this is really where any kind of digital audio shines, but Pro Tools specifically is just created a way to edit that is logical, ironically, is fluid, is fast, and intuitive. And you will get this after going through this video, and you will feel much more empowered to go ahead and tear up your tracks and make them fit the way you want them to fit. So here we are, left over from our last session. I've got, this track is building a little bit more. I've got some vocals in here now, but you can sort of see that we're starting to get a session. We've got different audio and MIDI regions, and really the song's coming together. At this point, if you're ready to edit, you want to start cleaning up and preparing for mixing. Now with editing, you don't want to spend forever on this stage, okay? You don't want to cut up everything minutely, but let me show you how to edit in Pro Tools, what to be looking out for, and what's going to be the most beneficial to you, so you'll be ready with clean tracks that are where they need to be, so your mixes will start off on the good foot, okay? It's going to start with the editing modes. Up here on the very top left, you see 4 modes: shuffle, spot, slip, and grid. And these are the 4 ways you can edit in terms of modes. Let's start with slip and grid because they're the most basic and the ones you're going to use the most. Grid mode is just what it sounds like. You've got a grid in Pro Tools, and in Pro Tools 8, you can change the grid up here. It says grid. You can not see the grid, or you can see the grid. See, the lines will disappear if you click them. The grid's still there, but it sort of gives you a guideline. I usually keep that in. And then this little arrow to the right is what your grid value is. Do you want the grid to be just set for a bar? So if I click and drag, it'll only move, zoom in here, only by bar. 1, 2, 3. I can't go in between a bar. So I'll undo all that. And then you've got, all the way down to 64th notes, or it can be dotted or triplet. Or you can slap the grid to seconds or minutes or samples. It doesn't even have to be bars and beats. But a typical song is going to be helpful to have bars and beats, usually at around 16th notes, That's going to keep things easy for you to edit, so you can easily select, one perfect bar. Bar 10, beat 1 to bar 11, beat 1. Nice and easy. So grid mode is only that. The one thing I will caution you about is grid mode has an arrow next to it. It's the only one that has a drop-down arrow. If you hold it, you have relative grid mode. Now, relative grid mode is like it sounds like. When you've got something moved, you can create a grid relative to that. And honestly, I find no real good uses for that in my day-to-day work with Pro Tools. Not to say that there aren't, but honestly, guys, just be careful that this isn't in relative grid mode, because you'll start sliding things around thinking you're locked to the grid when in actuality, you're locked to a grid relative to some other edit, and it'll be all off. So in case you see it purple up here, make sure you double click it or click and hold and get back to regular grid mode. So you'll use grid a lot. The other one you'll use a lot is slip. And slip is exactly the opposite of grid. Even though you can see the grid lines, you can just drag it wherever you want, in between the bars, wherever. Okay? There's no defined area that it will slide to. It can be slide as fine-tuned as you like. And that's helpful if you click something, tap the letter T to zoom in real far, and you can slide things exactly where you want them. Okay? Real simple. One little trick for you though, if you're in grid mode, which I tend to work a lot in grid mode, you can hold the command or control key while you click and drag, and it'll let you drag in slip mode. You see what I'm saying? I just slipped it way off the beat, but I'm still in grid mode. So that might be handy for you. Keep your left hand down there without having to switch modes. You can just click or hold control or command and drag. Okay? Spot mode we looked at briefly in the recording audio video. This is a mode where if you click an audio region, You don't actually drag it somewhere, but it's going to say, do you want to spot this to a specific location in your session? So I could click this and say, please move it to exactly bar 9. Click OK. And it moved it exactly to bar 9. Does that make sense? That's one way to do things. Typically, this is helpful for if you're mixing audio to picture, because you can have a specific minute, second value that you want this drum hit to come in. And instead of having to drag it and slide it till it's just right, you can literally type in what second value you want it to be. But I want to go back to the original user timestamp, exactly where it was. So spot mode, I don't use too often, but it's there for you. Now shuffle mode is very cool. Shuffle mode will solve the dilemma of wanting to, let's say, duplicate something, but you want to shift everything along with it. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Let's look at the drum loop. Okay, let's say, let me get back into grid mode here. I've got these 8 bars of drums. I'm going to delete them. And say you're messing with your drums. I'm going to drag these over. Let's take a listen. So let's say that was where you had the drum loop, but then you realized, you know what? This is my chorus. I want to double it. And so I need basically these 8 bars of drums to repeat right here. But I don't want to paste over this, and I don't want to have to grab this and move it back and move to make room and then paste it in. The simple way to do this is just select what I want to duplicate, go into shuffle, and I do this in grid mode so I'm perfectly on the bars and beats. And I go into shuffle mode, and then when I edit, it will shuffle everything to the right of it to the side. So I'm going to use Command or Control D, which duplicates. And it did exactly that. It duplicated, but look what it did. It shifted this whole section over perfectly in time. So it's very helpful to shift things around. Now, I use this also on a whole song basis. Let's say I've recorded a song, but then you want to extend a chorus, let's say, or a verse, but you already have something coming after that. Instead of cutting one half of the song and moving it out of the way to then duplicate the song part in the middle, you just select the part you want to duplicate, go into shuffle mode, click Control or Command D, and it'll squeeze it in there and shuffle the end perfectly to the side. I find that very helpful. But most of the time I'm in slip or grid mode. And the keyboard shortcuts to move around these modes, if you don't want to come up here and click, is just use the very top of your keyboard, F1 through F4. So F1 goes to shuffle, F2 goes to slip, 3, 4. All right, you can jump around whatever ones you want. All right, so you can, again, keep your left hand on the keyboard, right hand on the mouse. This will save you time. And that's ultimately what you want to do when you're a Pro Tools power user, save time, because you'll find that it'll help you make more recordings, more mixes faster, and you'll be more productive. All right, so those are your edit modes. Let's look at the edit tools up here available to you. Right here, you've got some zoom tools. Now these are, if you click the arrows, let's zoom in, click the left arrow, you zoom out. But we've already established that it's much faster to use the letter T and the letter R while having the A to Z button engaged, okay? So I never use those, but that's what they are. If you click this, this is the audio waveforms zoom out or in. So if you click the top arrow, you can see my waveforms get huge. You click it down a little bit, they get smaller. That is helpful when editing sometimes if it's a really small, if the waveform is teeny and you're like, you know what, I didn't record this very loud, but you wanted to do an edit, you can at least select it and zoom up the waveform so you can at least see the definition in the waveform a little more clearly. Make sense? All right, and then you got the same thing here, the MIDI zoom, and this just does it for MIDI regions. So if I'm in note view, so I can see the notes, if I click the down arrow, they get smaller. Click the up arrow, they get bigger. Okay, makes sense? So those just let you zoom in on the actual track. And then what you have here are some zoom settings where you can save some zoom memory locations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can adjust these in the preference menu. We can look at that in a later video. So you could have your built-in sort of zoom memory locators if you have one that zooms way out, one that zooms way in. Some people find these helpful, but I'm going to be honest with you guys. I rarely need to do this because when I want to zoom in on something, I come in here and select and then T my way in and R my way out. Or if I want to see a complete global view of everything, here's a tip. Hold down all three modifiers. That would be on a Mac, Control, Option, Command. On a PC, it would be Control, Alt, Windows, and the up key. You hold all three of those down, click up on the arrow, and it will fit everything into view. So if you had 48 tracks, they would make this really teeny. This is everything from click all the way up to my top guitar. And then you can get a good view of everything that's going on. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and hold Option or Alt click the track height, and that will adjust all the track heights. That's one simple tip there. And those are your zoom tools. Now here's where you're going to spend a lot of your time. These are your main edit tools. And the first one has to do with zooming. If you click it, this is your main zoom. You can click and zoom in, okay, with the mouse, or hold Option or Alt and it becomes a minus sign. You can zoom out, all right, wherever you want to zoom out. If you click and hold down, you can have a single zoom, which only zooms once. And I've never used that, but it allows you to zoom once and then you're ready to edit instead of being in zoom mode. I keep it normal zoom, but I never use it. Then to the right of it is your trimmer tool. Trimmer tool is so helpful. This allows you to do an edit like trim a region back. You don't want as much there, or reveal it back again. Again, trimming it away doesn't get rid of it. Even if you, let's say, are in the next tool, which is selector, and I select and click backspace, even if I didn't trim it away, I can always come to the trimmer tool and still reveal it back. Does that make sense? The trimmer just sort of trims the edges forward or back no matter what you've done to them, okay? And that audio file is always there like we saw in the region bin, and trimmer just reveals it or cuts it. And like I just showed you, the selector tool is much like if you're in, Microsoft Word or something, you can click and drag over a sentence. That's all it does. It selects an area you want to work on. Do you want to select something to cut, which would be the letter X? Do you want to, let's undo that. Do you want to select something to duplicate, which is the Command or Control D? Let's undo that. Do you want to just select something and zoom in? So you can obviously see that that's very basic and helpful. The grabber tool allows you to grab whole regions. So instead of a selection, I can grab a whole region and just slide it around. Okay? So you'll want to use this a lot. Very helpful. There's two other grabber tools here, separation and object. And again, I'm not even going to bother worrying about that because I never use that. Specifically because I am in the smart tool all the time. And let me spend a little bit of time on this. This is very, very basic, but this has been around in Pro Tools since the beginning. And the smart tool simply puts these three tools together. And this is what you're going to want to use most of the time, guys. Smart tool allows all three to be active, and it changes depending on where your mouse is on a track. So let's zoom in here a little bit so we can see this easier. If you're in the smart tool and your mouse is in the middle of the vertical height of the track, for up and down, it will be the selector tool. Just come in the middle, you'll always select. If you come to the bottom, it turns from that selector tool to the hand, which is that grabber tool. So if you want to just use the grabber tool, just move the mouse to the bottom of a region and grab. Okay? So middle and top are selector, bottom is grabber. And if you come to the end of an audio region, it turns into the trimmer tool. So I can select all the way I want, but if I just move it to the end, all of a sudden it is the trimmer tool. So I can trim it back, selector, or grab. Oh, then it's back to the trimmer tool. Okay? And then here's the other thing. It allows you to do instant fades. If you come to the edge and come to the top, it will turn into what it's showing is a fade tool. That way you can click and drag a fade in and it will fade that out. How cool is that? Once you have a fade, and we'll look at some fades more specifically, you can always drag those. It shows it as almost a separate region, so it becomes the trimmer tool. Oh, adjust the fade. Oh, you know what? Drag that fade longer. All day long, you can do this while in the Smart Tool. And then you can click on the fade itself and click delete, and it only deletes the fade, not the actual audio. So those are reasons alone to use a Smart Tool. It's smarter, it's faster. You won't be changing tools that often, okay? Next to it is the Scrubber tool. It allows you to click and drag. So you can scrub over and listen to what you're messing with. If you hold the Command or Control key, it'll slow it down. And if you hold the Option or Alt key, you can scrub really fast. All right, that might be helpful to you if you're just trying to find one area. But again, I rarely use this, but it does help you slow it down. And then finally, you come to the pencil tool, and we've looked at this in MIDI a little bit, and we've looked at this even in automating your tempo changes, but this allows you to draw data, and I'm going to show you more of this in context with mixing in the next video, but just know that it's there, and we're going to use it in a little bit, okay? So these three are your main three, hence the Smart Tool using those three, but I want you to know about that. I want you to keep it in Smart Tool mode as often as you can. And that, my friend, is where you're going to do most of your editing. Now, you have those tools in place. You can come around to whatever you need to do and start working. So you don't want to edit aimlessly, but I'll show you some basic examples of what I'm going to do. For instance, I've got this part in the middle of the verse. And on guitar, it's this little part. Real simple. But what I want to do is copy and paste that somewhere else. I want to fly that little part into another section of the song, okay? Now, what I want to show you to do that simply is I want to show you how to group, okay? And you're going to use these in mixing also, but if you select the two tracks that these are a pair, I've recorded them separately, but they do the exact same thing. They're doubled. Select the two tracks here, and then just choose Command or Control G, and that brings up the Create Group dialog. And I want to name it Guitar. That's going to be the name of my group, and I want it to be an edit and mix group by default, so it'll group those tracks together if I'm editing or if I'm mixing. And I even want to link the mutes and solos, so if I solo one guitar track, it'll solo both or mute both. Does that make sense? So I want to treat it as one guitar, and it makes it much easier to handle. And so I can see that currently in the group, it's going to be those two tracks that I selected. I could add more if I really wanted to at this point, but I've already selected what I want. And I'm just going to click OK. And now, you see guitar show up in this groups box that we looked at in the very first video, but we never used. This is where your groups, once you create them, will show up. And now, if I select one guitar, it selects both. If I select here one guitar, it selects both. If I unsolo one guitar, it unsolos both. They are linked at this point. So that can be very helpful if I want to select the two together and say, okay, it's 3 beats before this thing. So I'm going to select it. I'm going to click the letter C to copy. And I'm going to come over here to verse 2 where it does the exact same thing. See if I can find it. I think it's right around here. Paste. Must have been dreaming. There we go. So it's nice and in place. So at this point, it was a real simple edit, copy and paste, but I used the edit group. And again, if I don't want to do that anymore, if I just want to edit one other guitar, just unhighlight it, and now you're back to them being completely unlinked, unseparate. But at least the group still exists, so when you're ready to go back and treat them as one, you just reenact it, okay? That is your groups, and that's how I'll fly some vocal parts around or double guitars. It allows you to do one edit across multi-tracks. So this is helpful for drums, let's say, multi-track drum editing. That's where you're going to be able to slice things up. Now let me show you something that's very helpful in Pro Tools, and that's called tab to transient, okay? Let's say I've got these jacked up here, and they're not lined up where they need to be. Let's mute these vocals here, so we just focus on the guitar. So they're offbeat, and let's say I don't really know where they're supposed to go. I could just grab these and start moving them around, hope they'll fit. But what if I want this actual point where this hit right here is gonna, I want that to line up, let's say, perfectly with the downbeat. Use this button right here. It's called tab to transients. You enact it, and what that lets you do, let's get out of this, well, we can do them together. We'll do them together. Use the tab key on your keyboard, which normally, if this is not engaged, if you tab, it goes to the end of a region, wherever you are. So if I'm here, click tab, it moves my cursor right to the end. If I'm here and tab, it's moved it right to the end. Okay, that's what tab does by default. If you have tab to transient engaged, which looks like an arrow pointing to an audio wave, this is the beautiful thing. I can be anywhere, and then I tab, it's going to find wherever there's audio hitting, that little blip, tab, boom. It's tabbed right on this track, because again, they're together, right where the hit starts. So if I listen to him, you could even do it here. So let's tab right to the... It lets me get the cursor right up to the moment the chord starts. And that's beautiful because then I can press B to break it. So now I know that this whole region is going to start right where the guitar starts. So if I press F4 and make sure I'm flipped over to grid mode, then I can simply drag this on the grid and know that it's going to line up. And I can just find where I want it to line up with. Do you see what I'm doing here? Tab to transient allows me to slice and make an edit right where the hit is. Now, that is helpful if something just needs to be sliced and moved around, but that is also helpful, let's say, if you've got something that's played out of time. So let's take a listen to this bass line here. You hear right here, that sounds a little off to me. If I zoom in, you can sort of see this is the beat, but you can see the actual audio. If I flip to slip mode, the audio is right here. It's a little off. It's a little late. Okay. Now, if you want to be very particular and line that up manually, here's what you would do. You would simply be in Smart Tool. You can even be in the slip mode. It doesn't really matter. But I'm going to tab to transient till I get right there. I'm going to press B. I'm going to come here to the edge, press B. So now this beat is its own region. And I'm going to come back here in grid mode and drag it over. Let's take a listen. There you go. It's nice and in time. See what I'm saying? Using your basic Smart Tool and using tab to transient, it let me select this right on the note, right on the attack, on the pluck of the bass. That's what I wanted. The transient, the point where the wave kicks in. And that's what tab to transient will let you do. You can slice and then start moving around to the grid and line things up back to the grid that maybe they weren't to the grid, and without having to just do it in slip mode and guess, because you could do that. You could guess where the transient is, or you could zoom in. All I'm saying is tab to transient will save you time. Okay? Very, very helpful. Now, one thing I want to show you is how to comp. Okay? And comping is very, very important. And I'll do a quick demonstration of what comping can encompass. And I'll show it to you on the vocal, but you can do this with anything. Okay? Anything. You can do this with lead guitar parts, bass guitar. I've even used this on whole drum performances to get the best composite performance out of multiple takes, okay? So let's unmute everything, and unsolo. Again, I'm holding Option to click that so it affects every track. Now I've got a vocal, and what I have is 2 main vocal tracks, but I'm going to look at the verse here. It's called Vox. And what I've done is I showed you playlists earlier in the recording video. I have 3 playlists. So I have this one take, I have another take, and then I have a third take. And when I'm recording, I like to do multiple takes so that the vocalist, or if it's myself or if the instrumentalist is playing, I don't have to punch in all the time. I can let myself or the vocalist record a whole verse, let's say, or even the whole song in one big take and feel the whole context of the song. Even if they really mess up a couple lines here or there, I'll do a few takes like that, and hopefully you'll have enough good takes of the different pieces that if I patch them together, you'll have one super mega take, all right? That's what we're looking to do. So what I like to do is create a new playlist, and this is going to be my comp playlist. So you can call this Vox Comp if you like, whatever you want to call it. Click OK. And obviously this is a blank playlist. There's no audio in it, but it's my 4th playlist, and now I have, these other 3. What I'm going to do is, if you're in Pro Tools 8, you can use the new comping feature that I'll show you, but then I'll show you how to do it in Pro Tools 7 and below also, because it's not much different. But they just speed up the process in Pro Tools 8. If you choose Waveform here and go to Playlist View, I'm going to see my blank new playlist, which has nothing in it, comp, and then Vox, Vox 01, and Vox 02. Those are my 3 original takes, okay? And you can see they're indented here because they're really just virtual takes underneath this. Now, what you can do is solo the takes that you want to look at. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Option or Alt and click, drag those, make them a little bit bigger. Okay. When I solo this, it's not going to actually solo the vocal. It's just going to solo this take versus these other 2 takes. So let's take a listen. I'm on an island, my shores are closed in. Or I could solo this take. I'm on an island, my shores are closed in. Or this take. I'm on an island, my shores are closed in. You see what I'm saying? So the solo allows you to just audition one take over the other. Now what you want to do is listen and decide what you want to keep of which take to create this composite take. So let's take a quick listen. I'm on an island, my shores are closed in, and now I'm sinking, yeah. So if I kind of like this part right here, let's say, I'll select it, and then this arrow becomes active, and this is the promote to playlist. Copy the selection to your main playlist, which is this blank one. So you just click it, and it does exactly that. It makes a perfect copy, just in line, right where you want it. But I'm going to take a listen to this take here. My shores are closed in, and let's try this one. My shores are closed in. Yeah, so if I like that, I'll select that and promote that, and it's gonna cover up what I originally had because I liked it better. Now let's take a listen here. And now I'm sinking, yeah. And now I'm sinking, yeah. And now I'm sinking, yeah. So they're all pretty similar. Let's take this middle one and promote. And what you have there is actually one line of all 3 different takes. And if I uncheck solo, it's going to then play my main playlist instead of these 3. Let's take a listen. I'm on an island, my shores are closed in, and now I'm sinking, yeah. There you go. That's the basic of comping. Let's finish this verse here real quick. Let's take a listen. We'll mute this guy so we don't need to hear it. Looking for answers, revealed in your word, like I have always heard. I'm looking for answers, looking for answers, revealed in your word, like I've always heard. So that whole take, let's just promote that thing. Skip the first 2. Let's check the end here. But I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know anymore. Let's take a listen to this. But I don't know, I don't know, I don't know anymore. I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know anymore. So you could even zoom in here, flip over to slip mode. Let's take a little bit of this. Promote that up. Then you've got. And again, I'm just dragging these two together. See how that worked well? And to be sure, when I'm making edits, I like to come in. If you've got two different regions split up to each other, there's a good chance you could have a pop here or there. Let's take a listen. No, I don't know. You hear that? No, I don't know. You don't want that. So let's take a listen, see if I can drag it to a better spot first. I don't know, I don't know. I don't know, I don't know. We'll undo that. I think it was better. But what the simple fix is, if you're in the Smart Tool, remember how I showed you could fade at the edge of a region? Coming up to the top, you can create a fade. Well, if we undo that, if you have two regions next to each other, come to the bottom, and it looks like two fades crossing each other, hence a crossfade. You can click and drag to the left or the right, and it's going to create two fades that overlap each other. Let's take a listen. I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. There you go. In context. I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know anymore. It's as simple as that. That basically has created our comp. It's going to sound good. That's the best take of these 3 takes in this verse, and we're happy with it. And when you are happy with it, what you want to do is not leave it chopped up this way, because you want to go ahead and clean things up. I like to work with minimal edits. I like to have it look clean. I want to save computer power, and I want it to be really ready for mixing and commit to something, because you could always go back and recomp later, so you never are losing anything. But what I'm going to do here is select this whole thing, and I'm going to do some batch fades, okay? Because there could be little pops all throughout. Instead of having to go and put little fades everywhere by myself, just use Command or Control F for fade, and it brings up the batch fade dialog. And there's a lot of different options here. I rarely change any of these, but you could change them to a different type of fade. It could be a curve. You could click and drag the way you want the fade to look like, but I just keep it right there in the middle, somewhere like that. And I keep it around a 10 milliseconds, so really quick fade, and I click OK. And what that did in an instant is it drew little teeny fades. There's one on the end. There's a crossfade there. And I'm just holding Shift, by the way, and scrolling down on my mouse wheel to scroll left or right. So hold Shift and scroll left or right lets you go, excuse me, hold Shift and scroll up or down. It lets you go left or right in Pro Tools instead of up and down normally. Hold Shift. So you can see all these little crossfades it's making and fades at the end of a region. So it does that for me. I'll zoom out here. And so you know you're going to have a nice performance. And you're not going to have any pops and clicks. And once it's faded, then you can do the final step, which is consolidate it into one brand new squeaky clean region. And I love it. You do that from the Edit, Consolidate Region, or Shift Option 3. Okay? There you go. It created Vox Comp 01. If I undo that, just do Shift Option or Alt 3. Now it's done another one because, again, it keeps every region, but it created my nice Vox comp. And so I've got it as one separate region. And if we open up the region bin, come down here, it's already selected because I have this selected. Vox comp 2. It's right there. If I hold Option or Alt, you can audition. I'm on an island, my shores are closed in, and now I'm sinking, yeah. It's right there. Your perfect take of that verse. And it's right where it needs to be. And at this point, you can just go back to waveform view and you don't need to see those other takes for now. Okay? That is how I comp in Pro Tools 8. Now, if you have Pro Tools 7 or earlier, have no fear. You're not missing out at all. You just have to do one extra step. And simply, that is, you would create the same comp, a blank playlist like before. But then what you'd have to do is, and I'll do this on the chorus. We'll unmute that. I've got just 2 takes of the chorus. I'd create a new playlist, call it Vox 2 Comp. There's my blank playlist. But since you don't have playlist view, simply come to one of your takes, and let's take a listen.
I'm finding it hard to believe.
Let's just get drums.
I'm finding it hard to believe. I need to see you.
And what I like to do is select so that when I press play, it'll always play the same thing. Then let's listen to your other take.
I'm finding it hard to believe. I need to see you.
So if I like that better, all I do, don't move anything. Keep that selection. Press the letter C to copy. Come up here, choose your comp, your blank playlist, and press the letter V for paste. That is it. All right. If you just keep that selected and just copy and paste without reselecting anything, it's going to be pasted perfectly where you need it to be.
I'm finding it hard to believe.
And then you could, split these up and pick one word from one take and vice versa until you have them all, just like we did before, all cut up. And then you would do batch fades, and then you'd consolidate, and it's already on your Vox 2 comp. So it's the same principle. You just can't see them all at the same time, okay? So have no fear. I comp like that for years. That is comping, and that is using consolidating regions to clean up your tracks so that you've got nice, clean regions that you're ready to mix with, okay? Really simple. I hope that's helpful to you guys. Again, the goal of editing here in Pro Tools is get your tracks ready for mixing, okay? Because there's nothing worse than having a bunch of mess in your session before you're ready to mix, because when you mix, you don't really want to be slicing things up. You want to be done with that. So use your modes, use your tools, and again, the edit menu here gives you access to all the commands that we're doing: duplicate, repeat, separate region. These are all things that I'm doing with keyboard shortcuts, and I've shown these to you. And I'll show you more as we go. But again, fades, you can create. That's the batch fade thing. So that's where you'll have the edit features, but you can use the keyboard shortcuts to do this all day long. All right? Great job. You're moving through this. You're learning a lot. That is editing in Pro Tools. Thanks for joining us. Stick around for the next video. We'll be diving into mixing. Take care.